apostasy. A defection or revolt is the formal disaffiliation from, abandonment of, or renunciation of a religion by a person. It can also be defined within the broader context of embracing an opinion that is contrary to one's previous religious beliefs. Occasionally, the term is also used metaphorically to refer to the renunciation of a non-religious belief or cause, such as a political party, social movement, or sports team. Apostasy is generally not a self-definition. Few former believers call themselves apostates due to the term's negative connotation. Many religious groups and some states punish apostates. This may be the official policy of a particular religious group, or it may simply be the voluntary action of its members. Such punishments may include shunning, excommunication, verbal abuse, physical violence, or even execution. Under Iranian law, apostasy from Shia faith is punishable by death. Non-religious Iranians are officially unrecognized by the government, and one must declare oneself as a member of one of the four recognized faiths in order to avail oneself of many of the rights of citizenship. Iran was reported by the Washington Post to be among the 13 countries where atheism can attract capital punishment. The last noted legal execution for apostasy in Iran was in 2014, when Mohsen Amir Aslani was convicted and executed for making innovations in religion and insulting the Prophet Jonah. Furthermore, many people, such as Yousef Nadarkhani, Saeed Abdini, have been recently harassed, jailed and sentenced to death for apostasy. Although apostasy is punishable by death in Iran, the Islamic Republic has never codified the crime of apostasy. Instead, relying on the Iranian constitution, the Islamic Penal Code authorizes the enforcement of certain Islamic laws known as hudud crimes even when the crime is not specifically mentioned in the criminal code. The fact that apostasy is not explicitly proscribed by the Iranian legal framework, and the differences in interpretations of Islamic law regarding apostasy, contribute to a lack of legal certainty for those living under Iranian laws. Apostasy in the Islamic Republic of Iran relies on witness interviews, media reports and court documents to demonstrate how Iranian authorities have handled apostasy cases. This report also describes how the Iranian government violates its international obligations with respect to freedom of thought, conscience and religion, as well as the right to life. The Islamic Penal Code, which is Iran's criminal code, does not explicitly prohibit apostasy. Nevertheless, it states that in accordance with Article 167 of the Iranian Constitution, Sharia law is to apply in instances where the IPC is silent regarding a particular crime. This provision enables the Iranian judiciary to prosecute apostasy cases even though there is no codified provision defining the crime of apostasy. With no exact definition, and without a uniform understanding of what actually constitutes apostasy, the legal framework within which apostasy cases are prosecuted is ambiguous. The crimes of swearing at the Prophet and insulting sacred Islamic beliefs, which have been explicitly mentioned in the IPC, are also vague because it is not clear what statements qualify as offensive enough to justify a criminal charge. Iran's radical regime, which has engaged in the massive repression of Muslims who converted to Christianity, arrested Hossein Soodmand in 1990. He was tortured and held in solitary confinement for 1 month. Hossein Soodmand was born in 1940 to a Muslim family in the conservative Shia city of Mashhad in northeastern Iran. Aged 7, Hossein had joined other local boys in throwing stones at a Christian woman who was collecting water at a well. It was later, as a teenager doing military service, that Jesus appeared to Hossein in a dream while he was recovering from illness. Soon after, he gave his life to Christ and began to share his faith joyfully. He converted to Christianity during his military service in Avas, after becoming friends with an Iranian-Armenian Christian. When he returned home and told his family about his decision, Hossein was told to leave. Hossein's family, however, were unimpressed. Forced to choose between them or Christ, he left Mashhad and went to live in Tehran. There he worked initially as a street vendor, while attending Bible classes in his spare time. He became a hard-working evangelist and, later, a Bible distributor for the Bible Society. So he moved to Tehran, where he worked as a street seller and in time came to know the Reverend Mehdi Dubai, a fellow convert to Christianity, who would also later pay with his life for his own act of apostasy. Hossein then moved to Isfahan, where he worked at the Anglican-run Institute for the Blind, and it was here that he met his wife, Madab. They married in 1970, in a service conducted by another Christian convert, Reverend Apostasy, who was also later killed because of his choice to leave Islam. In 1977, Hossein became the assistant pastor of the Assemblies of God Church in Isfahan, which was under the stewardship of Edward Evsepian Mayer, now superintendent of the Council of United Iranian Churches in Europe. When Edward was posted to another city, Hossein took over the leadership of the church and was ordained by Edward's brother, Haig, superintendent of the Assemblies of God Churches in Iran, and another Iranian Christian to later pay the ultimate price for his faith. In 1980, after the confiscation of the Christian-run hospital and institution for the blind in Isfahan, Hossein moved back to Mashhad with the aim of planting a church in his home city. But though the church thrived, the local authorities, in what is one of Iran's most religious cities and a place of pilgrimage for millions of Shia Muslims every year, refused Hossein permission to build a church. Instead, he was initially permitted to host the church in his home, above which he erected a sign, declaring it the Assemblies of God Church of Mashhad. But Hossein, who was a keen evangelist and distributed Bibles across Iran, continued to be viewed with suspicion and, following the death of Supreme Leader Ruhollah Khomeini in 1989, he was told his church must close. Hossein continued to meet with his congregation in secret, but he was regularly arrested and detained, then usually released after a few days. However, in October 1990, Hossein was held for longer than usual, spending 1 month in solitary confinement before being released after complaints from Bishop Haig. But Hossein was rearrested just a few weeks later, and this time he never returned home. According to the report of the UN Special Rapporteur at the time, Reynaldo Galindo Pol, Hossein had been charged with apostasy, propagating Christianity, distributing Christian literature, and setting up an illegal church. On the 3rd of December 1990, Hossein Soodmand, a Muslim who had converted to Christianity in the 1960s, was hanged for apostasy under the sentence of a Sharia court in Mashhad, Iran. Hossein remains the first Iranian Christian to have been officially executed for his apostasy, though others have been sentenced to death, only to see the ruling overturned after an outcry, while some of Hossein's closest friends, including Arastu, Haig and Mehdi, are among the 7 Christians to have been killed extrajudicially since the revolution. Hossein had been arrested a few weeks beforehand, and was executed following a ruling by an Islamic clerical court, without his family's knowledge. His wife, Madab, who is blind, and 4 children, Ramton, Rashan, and twins Arya and Aryan, only found out about his death after other senior church leaders were summoned to the court. They were told Hossein had been executed and his body buried in an unmarked grave outside the walls of a Mashhad cemetery, an area reserved for the accursed. So Hossein's family were not afforded any opportunity to bid him farewell, nor even to hear his final wishes. And, despite their pleas, they have never been permitted even to erect a simple headstone above his resting place. Shortly before his execution, Soodmand wrote to friends who had fled Iran. By following the example of the great shepherd of the flock, the Lord Jesus Christ, I am willing to sacrifice my life for my sheep. My escape from these dangers would weaken the flock of God and discourage them. I don't want to be a bad example to them, so I am ready to go to jail again and, if necessary, even to give my life for them. Soodmand was not the last convicted or condemned for the crime, and converting to Christianity is still a crime in Iran. Thank you for watching Death Row.